Okay, improvise. Yeah, the next speaker is very special. I could do at least a whole talk about how awesome she is, because maybe challenge her with find a paper, like maybe some of these tissues we had at the fruit, this black one, and find a dustbin and put it away from here, like, I don't know, start at 2 meters and then until you are away about 2 kilometers. What is your
10 minutes is fine.
10 kilometers?
10 kilometers.
Because she's a basketball player. Maybe you can recognize that there is okay, I can make fun of me, okay? This is okay. So oh, yeah. This is Martina. Martina is talking about something very special, something very awesome about ivy, and it's not poison ivy. And keep in mind, challenge her to throw some kind of ball or whatever into a basket and just check if it is true that she is a very awesome former national basketball player, right? German national basketball player. Keep it up for Martina.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave. And I want to say, even though he might be short, but his heart is great, and he's he's a really great person. So yeah, thank you for the nice introduction. I'm gonna talk about Angular Ivy, the new rendering engine that's coming now in Angular 9. Some words about me. I'm a Google developer expert in Angular and web technologies. I'm also Women Tech Maker Ambassador in the south of Germany, where I'm coming from, Heidelberg. Maybe you ever heard of the city. Really beautiful. We have a nice castle. Maybe nothing to compare it to Madrid, but yeah, it's still really nice. But now I moved to Leipzig to get new challenges. It's the east of Germany. Pretty awesome accent, German accent over there. Yeah, the German people, they know what I'm talking about. And for work, actually, I'm a trainer and consultant and developing an Angular project, running a couple of Angular workshops from all over the world. Also, I'm part of the AngularGirls core team. We organized the AngularGirls event over here. Who haven't heard of AngularGirls yet? If not, it's fine. Please come to me, Robert, or Shmuela. Shmuela is giving a talk afterwards. She's the founder of AngularGirls, and we're supporting women in tech by having a free Angular workshop for women. And it's really, really great. Like there, we have from 15 to 120 participants each time for our events. As well, I organized the NGDE conference together with Dave, like in the end of August, and the NG Rome conference. Like last weekend it was. So we start planning these two conferences as well already. If you want to know more about it, you can always ping me as well. And of course, as I said, I'm playing basketball. Who knows the movie? Space Jam! Woo! So I'm not gonna start to sing I Believe I Can Fly, but I promise you with Ivy you will definitely be able to fly now. But first, I want to introduce you what actually is a compiler. I mean, I developed some C++ code as well, and in this term, a compiler is something different too. So it means actually we have C++ code and it got compiled maybe a couple of days, and then you figure out you have a linked missing library and you have to compile it again, and then finally you have the assembler code or like the machine code. But it means actually something different in the Angular world. What it means is we have our declarative Angular code, and it got compiled to JavaScript. Rotascript code. So for that, we have the NGC compiler, and having that said, we have here this declarative code, like this TypeScript code. I mean, the process can't understand TypeScript code, right? They don't know what this add component thing means, so we have to use a way for telling the browser pure JavaScript code. I really want to keep it. to just compile it to JavaScript code to have this. It depends on which ECMAScript version, of course, the browser can actually understand and render and execute, since there are some processes who can be improved more, should be improved more. I'm not naming things, Internet Explorer. But then we maybe have to get another ECMAScript target for the older browser versions. So that's basically the task, the duty of a compiler. And it has also some other features like the whole scoping. Whoever maybe developed with Rotter query knows that it's really hard. We have this huge JavaScript, maybe just one Rotter script file. The biggest challenge till now. We have this huge big Rotter script file, and we have a global scoping, and we have the function scoping with the var, and it's really difficult. So the compiler takes actually care for us that the things that we actually bind to the modules and to the classes and everything, that it stays in its own scope. As well, of course, the compiler have its own evaluation of property change, like when I have an object cat.color.red. Maybe it makes no sense, but I love cat, so I have to bring it up somehow, that actually the color has the property red as well. As well, of course, variable function calls evaluation, and the type checking, of course. I mean, that's why we use TypeScript, and we love TypeScript, because we finally have types. Having that said, I would like is actually the costliest resource on the web page. Maybe you think it's HTML. Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe you say it's CSS. But I tell you, it's RotterScript. Even though we love RotterScript so much, it's not only the bundle size, it's also the execution, like the parsing to the abstract syntax tree and then the execution of it. And I can assure you the people developing the Chakra and V8 engine, the RotterScript engines in the web browser, doing a great job to really work on the performance on RotterScript. But I'm gonna talk mostly about the bundle size. So that as well was the thing the core team of Angular thought, we have to change something. We have to, the bundle sizes are increasing so much, and we have, we are having our mobile phones or our tablets, and we maybe are in countries where the internet isn't that good, right? So the initial time to render, and there are some great measurements actually, like there is a first time render, first time to interact, like some performance you can actually measure. And they said it's way too high, we have to do something. So what they created, Ivy. So they thought, Ivy to the rescue, we want to decrease the bundle size. And with Ivy, there actually comes a lot more of benefits. Smaller bundle size, of course. We have a faster compilation. What that really means, I'm explaining it. And having that said, it's easier to debug as well, and I will tell you how. So let's talk about the bundle size. And I was like, okay, bring it on. I'm just compiling it with Ivy enabled and the Vue engine. Vue engine is the rendering engine that is now inside Angular. So I run ng-new, my awesome app, and then I just said ngc. And then I got this. And I was, holy, this is incredible. I mean, I didn't do anything more than just ng-new, so it's just like the normal boilerplate code. And I had 1.3 megabyte compiled. That doesn't include like compression and minification and something like that, just normal compilation. And I had Ivy with 14 kilobytes and Vue engine 1.3 megabytes. And I was like, okay, bring it on. I want to know why. So let's see what is actually compiled. For that, can you see it from behind? Should I? Oh, perfect, awesome. So I removed a little bit the boilerplate here. So I just have a welcome and some string interpolation, like with Ivy. So far, so good. There's no Ivy enabled. I just typed ng-new Vue engine. That's my project is called, and I just changed a little bit the boilerplate code. So let's see. I just run ngc. This is quite taking a long. I'm always asking then for some jokes, but I'm a German, we don't have humor, so we better not doing that. So let's see what is going on here. So we have like the compiler output we see here in this dist file. Okay. So we have our node modules, apparently, our testing for end-to-end testing files, and here we have app. Who of you ever did that step actually? Good, so mostly of you, you don't know what to expect now. So let's see, drum roll. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. I mean, I have so many files. I just wrote 6 lines of HTML, and what I got here is the app component, JS, metadata, ng-factory, ng-summary, and of course, like the testing file and the style files. I was like, what? Okay, but it's fine. I mean, let's see what's actually inside these files. So we have the app component, JS. Okay, it looks like this is like our controller code, like this one-to-one mapping from TypeScript to JavaScript. And then I will not go through every file. I'm just telling, okay, then I looked at the ng-factory file, and here I actually saw this creation, here's something like div and the style. So I figured out the ng-factory file is actually that file that is creating my template, my HTML template. So this file is responsible for actually rendering my template. So far, so good. Okay, so, and the ng-summary and the metadata JSON, it contains all the dependency that my component needs to be rendered properly, to be functional. And I was like, okay, this is quite a lot of files. Maybe that is already the reason, or let's see. So what I did then, I just removed this folder, and I will just enable Ivy. So how do I enable Ivy? I go to my tsconfig.json file. I mean, everyone knows it here. It has all the compiler options, and as well like the target, which ECMAScript version it should be compiled to. And here down we have the compiler options. And here I can just put a flag, enable Ivy to true. That's it. And now we are running ngc again. I still don't have humor, so I will still not tell a joke. So let's see what's inside there now. It's the same, it's just a dist folder, and we have here the source file. And let's see what's there inside. Wow, this is amazing, but where everything went? I mean, like, where is now the template rendered? Because we have here the JavaScript, just the JavaScript file. What happened? We open it, let's see. So it seems like happens a lot. So let's format it shortly. So what we see here is actually something that's called a static property, and this is this defined component here. Okay, what is this y0? Let's take a look. It's my Angular framework. It's like, so it has to be a function or property from the Angular framework itself. And it has now some called private API. That's why we have this tether signs over there. Don't ask me how to write a tether sign on the keyboard, please. I have no clue. I just copy-pasted always from always generated code. But yeah, what do we see here? We have a type, we have the selector, app root, and here, this is the important thing. We have the template property. And in this template property, we have a function that actually creates the template. So we don't have an extracted file with the ng-summary anymore, with the ng-factory, sorry. We have everything inside one file. Here we can see, when I shortly split the screen, split vertically, that everything that is written down here is actually rendered here. We have our div, then the h1, at the index 0 and index 1. And maybe you already saw we have here 2 if statements. What is that? The 1 actually means init, and 2 means updated. And we have something here that's called text interpolation, text interpolate. So what is the second about? Like what is done here actually? What? The what? Sorry. Yeah. The change detection. Actually, I mean, you were both completely right. Change detection. Yes, right. If I would have stickers for you, I would give you one now. Maybe I have an anti-potato sticker. Yes. So what I actually wanted to point out here is now the updated whenever like the title would change, it would go here and it would like interpolate like the normal binding to the variable. And we have all the function over here to create the template. So I was like, wow, this is quite cool. So it means, I remember. God, short shocking moment. What? All good, everything is under control. Yeah, so I figured out, okay, with the view engine, we compiled 3 files. I just shortened up CMP with component because otherwise it wouldn't have fit in my slide and I had to do that. So it would be compiled 4 files. With Ivy, it got just compiled 1 file and everything is inside this 1 file. So I was like, okay, that's amazing, but could this be really the reason why now the bundle size is smaller? I mean, of course, you just remove a lot of files and write everything in 1 file. No, this can't be the reason. And then I figured out something. In generally, what we love to do if we reduce JavaScript code, we don't want to ship functions we don't use, right? So what is it like dead code elimination? What is it called? Tree shaking. We just shake it off. I'm not singing Taylor Swift, I promise. But we just shake it off. But then I figured out the view engine isn't tree shakeable. With that said, so I thought about, okay, that means that I ship code to my web browser I'm not using. Okay, let's take a look again how this is actually compiled with the view engine. So I just have my normal app component HTML, and we take a look how it's actually compiled. So this is the view engine compilation right now. So I saw that there's something it's called a view definition, and it actually is an array of all the instructions how my template is rendered. So here we can see we have an element reference. So on the index 0, there's a div. It has a class, and the class has the value blue. We have a text definition, and it renders hello NGDE. So no string interpolation here, just a simple hello world example. So this is an array of instructions how my template got rendered. So far, so good. Let's see what the view engine does with that. And here's the point. The framework takes the component, and for each instruction inside this array, it calls a function. So for example, we have first here this element reference, and it would fulfill the first case. So the framework calls the function create element. So far, so good. Then we have our text node. So it would go to the second case, and it calls the function create text. Okay, but hold on. That means during compilation time, I don't know which functions are called, right? Because it's during runtime. So the framework can't figure it out which function should be shipped and which not. And that's the reason view engine isn't tree shakeable. So in my example, I mean, there are a lot of more, of course, and it's not 1, 2, 3 till 16. It has other numbers, but I simplified it a little bit. But there are a lot of for services, for modules, for directives, all the functions how to render the component. And it's I ship all these functions, even though I'm not calling them. Okay, that explains everything. So I took a look again in how Ivy does that. Right, we remember it was something like that. So it basically means it's the other way around right here. With Ivy, we actually call framework functions directly. like we have our JavaScript file over here. This is our app component.js, which is rendered, which is generated by Ivy compiler. And the template calls directly the functions. So we have our element start, and the framework just exports this function. We have our text the template code calls the text function, and the framework has exports it. So it's more like the other way around. It's more like, yes, with that, my framework knows exactly which functions are used and which ones don't, right? So with that said, I don't know if you say having that said or with that said, I don't know. But I always use both things. So this is tree shakeable, right? And that's the reason why actually, that's the reason why Ivy is now so small when it comes to bundle size. But there's a big, big but. I'm talking about template code. I'm talking about UI code. Things like the reactive forms module or the HTTP client module, these ones are libraries. These ones are already on its own way tree shakeable. So I'm talking about the UI code. And of course, as well, if I'm using all these functions, it differs. It might not differ that much as well. But mostly, we don't use all these functions that the framework provides. So when it comes to really UI, we can increase the performance, but decrease the bundle size with Ivy because it shakes everything off. And this is really amazing. This is one of the best things that comes now with Ivy. But there's also another thing. It's the faster compilation. So you know when you type ngc or when you compile it, it takes normally a long time regarding how many libraries you actually have. But with Ivy, we just have one single file. So the compiler doesn't have to create these 4 files and have internally the mapping of all the references of all these files. So that's fine. So we just have one single file. Okay, but that is not only the reason why it's fast in compilation, but it definitely counts in because we just have to compile one single file. But what I want to point out is the locality principle. It means that the component has all the information for being compiled. Yes, it has to have all the information to being compiled, right? But it also has, currently with the Vue engine, even more information that it actually needs. So don't get too much shocked with that. It's generated by the Vue engine, but let's see what's actually going on here. I mean, we just have an example, and we see here something like the ngIf. So what my component using the structural directive. Can you maybe see that there's something inside this generated code that actually my component doesn't need to know? Could someone imagine? I tell you, it's this. Because this is actually just used by ngIf. These are the services. What? No, yeah, ngIf is a structural directive, but this is, as well structural directives, and this is used by ngIf. So we have here actually a transitive dependency, because these two are just used by ngIf. So having that said, all my components who are using the ngIf needs to be recompiled if these dependencies of ngIf are changing. Of course, I mean, we are not recompiling ngIf that much since it's not really changing, but I mean, we are writing a lot of own structural directives or normal directives in general. So, and if we're using that in our components, every single time when we maybe re-implement our own written directive, all the components will be recompiled as well. It's a so-called global compilation, because we have this transitive dependency. So everything has to be recompiled again when something is changed. Let's see how Ivy is doing that. With Ivy, we're just saying, I want to use the ngIf. Okay, and here we have our static property, our defined directive that is exported from this private API from the core framework. And here we're getting an NGF with all the dependencies of the NGF. Having that said, it means that we don't need to recompile this component if we change something on our own structural directive. We have a much, much clearer API. We have a much clearer separation of like our directive and our component. And that means as well so many benefits and so many advantages, since we can now actually ship modules that are already compiled ahead of time. Because we can compile it, like Angular Material. Who's using Angular Material? Yes, I'm pretty sure you know all that it imports a lot of modules. When you want to use a lot, even for a single input field or a single button, you have a huge, well, you know that. So, and this all has to be recompiled, but we now could ship that already compiled. We have a clear API how to call these modules, and with Ivy, it provides actually this stable API to ship this already compiled code through NPM. I mean, isn't that nice? I mean, honestly, this is so amazing. I mean, I was like, okay, this is great. Like, we have smaller bundle size, and the compilation is faster. It's really, really awesome. And of course, that leads us to one of the last points. It's easier to debug, of course, as well. I mean, we don't have to go through 4 files, and we don't have to really, okay, here's like the string interpolation, so I step to the template file. Okay, and I have a stack trace that is not readable at all. And in the meantime, the Angular errors on the console are really improved a lot, in my opinion. And we can really, because now the template is calling a function on the framework, we can really set a breakpoint exactly where I want it to have. And I see all the steps of having actually the component rendered. And this is really, really awesome. I actually didn't tell you one other advantage that we have now with Ivy and this private API to define a component. Because did you think about that we actually now could create a function that returns us a component? And with that, we can actually load even components dynamically. This is really amazing. And if you want to know more about it, I highly recommend the articles of Manfred, because Manfred Steyer, he's speaking later. Unfortunately, not on that topic, on another great topic. But he researched a lot about that and do a lot about things with the high order components. And if you're interested in that, you should go on his page and read all the articles. It's amazing. So I'm pretty sure I convinced you to enable Ivy, and I really want you to try it out. We had a great talk about open contribution, and it's really amazing. And I really highly recommend say thank you to all the persons over here, because it's really hard work they're doing there. Go to the Angular core team and say thank you. It's really important. But what I want to point out is actually that a good contribution, one of the best contributions as well, is not just writing code, it's as well filing an issue. Because to have a proper rendering engine now just shipped in version 9, they need real data. You are the ones who are developing Angular in real projects. Like with customer projects, you have to deal with so many complexity. And if you enable Ivy and you face some issues, please open an issue on the Angular core team, and they will definitely take a look into that, because mostly all of the core members are right now into Ivy still, and they want to have it great. So I'm pretty sure I convinced you to use Ivy. How do you do that? It was shipped in Angular 8 as an opt-in possibility, like I did right now, because I have Angular 8. So you can either do it with a flag on project creation, like with the -- enable -Ivy, and then build it, or like I did inside the theos-config JSON, rotason. theos-config rotason. So there, like what I did, just write enable Ivy inside. Next I guess next Tuesday or Wednesday, there actually is released the first release candidate of Angular 9, and it ships Angular Ivy by default. If you face some issues, if you want to try it out and you face some issues, there's also, of course, a possibility to opt out. Exactly the same way like we opt in right now. We just pass this flag enable Ivy inside our tsconfig rotason. I could say that the whole time, I love it. Inside the tsconfig JSON, and you just say enable Ivy like false. Okay, but what is about third-party libraries? I mean, it's so awesome, of course. I mean, I created a completely new Angular application, and it is already Ivy compatible, obviously, because I just created it, and I created it maybe with -- enable Ivy. But what about third-party libs that aren't compiled with Ivy yet? Even for that, the Angular team has a good fallback, because they created 2 compilers. The first one is the normal compiler. It's called ngtsc. It compiles just the Ivy. It's such a difficult word to be honest. Compatible code to JavaScript. Everything fine. We don't need to do something more on that. But they already thought about all the libraries that aren't Ivy yet, that aren't Ivy ready yet. So they created a compiler that's called ngcc compatibility compiler. Say it 5 times and I'm done. Yeah, I don't know. Let's you know what I mean? God, you know exactly. So I didn't have enough coffee for that. It converts the old style modules inside a so-called Ivy TypeScript definition format, and then it gets compiled properly. And it's so amazing. And maybe you already get a feeling of how much actually this team is really wants to help us to reduce the bundle size and really wants to improve and introduce Ivy. Of course, it's always like really a strong forcing step to say, okay, now we have the old compiler and now it's the new one. And there's a lot of changes, but it's definitely worth it. So I really, really want to tell you, please enable Ivy already now. And now I'm curious, actually, who of you have projects with Angular version 6 still? Or 5? And 7 or 8? Yeah, that's most of you. Thanks for the feedback, because it's really amazing. So many Angular projects are still like on older versions, but I can assure you, if you try it out with Ivy, it could still work. So please try it out, and just, as I said, file an issue or talk to me as well afterwards. And yeah, talk to me if you find an issue or if you want to know what exactly to do with the steps. So in summary, we saw that the bundle size is really increasing significantly when it comes to UI code. I always want to point it out, because library code, of course, it is tree shakeable, but it is already tree shakeable before. Like we had the change of all our RxJS operators, that we're just importing the operator that we're using and not the whole library, and things like that. The same for Angular material. So it just when it comes to UI code, of course. And one really important thing, and what I especially really love, is it only recompiles what changes. We have this clear API, and you can go to StackBlitz. You could do it. You go to StackBlitz, you import just Angular core, nothing more, and Angular core has a dependency over XJS, yes, of course, but you can just install Angular core and write your own component without anything, like without the ng module thing, just this theta-defined component, and then how the component is rendered. I highly recommend it, because it's really a wow, like a really, this is holy, this is real shit, this is really good. And another important thing, it's backwards compatible. So if you still have third-party libraries that maybe aren't Ivy yet, it still can be compiled. Having that said, I just want to point out you can always reach out for me on Twitter or ping me an email, or go to my website. You find some more contact possibilities, but I will be here the whole day as well. You will find my slides over there, but it will all also, of course, send it on Twitter. And for that, I just want to say thank you. I really hope you enjoyed it and you got really deep insights how our world as a developer now increased in how it became better with Angular Ivy. And enjoy the rest of your day. I really love it in Madrid. It's my first time in Spain ever. I mean, I've been to Mallorca, but I don't count Mallorca in. I'm not going that far. But I love Spanish food really a lot. So thank you for having me here and have a great, great day.